All right, we're off my display table. We're onto my bench now. So there's a few different tools you're going to need for this project, and I'll show them to you real quick. First of all, this is a dental tool. I use it to pull wires through things. I use it to push things. So I've got this little tool. I have two different types of pliers. I have this one with a long needle nose, and it does not have grips. It's just smooth on the inside. Sometimes you need that. I like it for placing capacitors in the board. And then I've got these, which have a cutter, and they have the little grips. So I like this for pulling out old stuff that I don't care if I scratch or whatever. Then I got a little thing of end nips. This is for cutting close to the board. I have a few other things. Of course, I've got this screwdriver. Of course, I've got a soldering iron. And I have a desoldering iron. So I will start with removing the shield cover here. I'll do that with the screwdriver. All right, so there's multiple screws on here. There's these larger holes here. Those screws do not need to come out. Leave those alone for now. You just want these 1, 2, 3, and then there's 2 more up here. Those 5 are going to come out, and I recommend keeping a little dish nearby. So yeah, we're going to take out these 5 screws first. You take those 5 and then this thing. So we'll set that aside. And now I have access to this whole circuit board. So what I like to do, first of all, is I like to take the end nips, and I don't want to go too far. I don't want to cut into the hole like the solder wad, but I like to go and cut the back ends off of the parts that I'm going to be removing. A lot of times when these were originally trimmed, they were trimmed a little bit rough or a little bit long. Some of them are bent, and it makes it a bit of a problem when I'm trying to get the very tip of the desoldering tool. The tip has got a very tiny hole. It's only a little bit bigger than the wire itself. So I like to slide that over the wire, and then it allows me to suck away all the solder from the pad around it. So like I said, first thing I'm going to do is the coupling caps, and there's 5 of those, and then there's EQ caps, and there's 6 of those. Coupling, EQ. It'll be a zip folder, and it'll have an HTML file, and that's what this is right here. See that? You get that file too. And between those two, it's about all you need. I have written directions too. That's a text file. And then, like I said, you'll get a picture of the finished kit installed so that you can even just reference and see exactly how everything goes in. And I'm not going to show you this whole process, but I will show you a couple of these. So I like to, yeah, isn't that a lovely sound? So yeah, I'll show you a little close up there. See that? And then when I flip this board over, sometimes the piece even just falls out. Oh, look, there it comes, like a loose tooth. All right, so that's out of there. I got all these other little blue guys to come out now. Boom. And this little orange guy. Actually, the one of these blue guys and the other orange guy, they're tantalums. They're in the low-pass filter circuit. So I'm going to take out these 5 coupling caps first. I'll come back after I'm done with that. I desoldered the other side of the board right here. Desoldered these, and so sometimes this dental tool can help push this stuff through if it's already disconnected. Like that one works. This one's still a little sticky. It's able to work that loose. All right. So you can see I didn't have to pull that one out. It just fell out. Another one fell out too. And I've got 2 more here to pull out. These guys right here. That one came out with no resistance at all. Same with that one. Like I said, the other one over here already fell out on its own. So that's all the coupling caps. We'll go ahead and replace those with these 5 3.3 UF. So I push the caps on the board, and then I come around to the other side here, and usually all I got to do is grab the tip, the wire, and I just pull it up and pull it out to kind of set it in the little socket area. Once it's nice and mechanically solid, then I feel good about soldering it. So that's all 5 now. So what I'll do now is I've got my solder. I like to use the 6337, the kind that melts and hardens at the same temperature. So it doesn't go through a point where it stays like sticky or wet. Like it's either liquid or it's solid. It's a 1 degree difference. 6040 has like a several degree difference. Like I don't have to go back and worry about solder joints with this stuff the way that I used to with the 6040. But yeah. So after I install these, I like to go back with the end nips and trim them up. All right, so that's the 5 coupling caps. I have to come back in here and trim these guys off. All right, so that's all the coupling caps. You can see them, these red guys here, 5 of them. Oops, sorry. So next step is I'm going to pull these EQ caps. There's 4 of these films and then 2 of these tantalums. Those will be replaced by these ones right here. I'll go ahead and do that next, and then I'll show you after I pull them out. So yeah, some of these film caps, the first 2 on here, actually had glue on them, and so when they're glued down, they're almost impossible to push through from behind with the pick tool. So anyway, you can see on here on the board a little bit of this stuff, and again, I like to use the pick tool to kind of scrape that a little bit. Just gently scrape it with the side of the thing, and just get the glue up. So I've pulled out these 4 EQ caps and these 2 high pass filter caps. I'll go ahead and replace those after I clean up a little bit of glue. So I wanted to show y'all before I moved on and actually soldered this. So the little trace around here, as I was desoldering it, it was a little loose. The trace isn't broken that I can see, but whenever that happens, if I can, that's another reason why I use this dental tool. I like to scrape this green off of the copper trace, because this is a green, this is copper underneath this little bit of epoxy layer. If you scrape that off, as you can see, I've scraped it off here. And then I take the wire from the part that I got coming through the hole, and I bend it down, and luckily this one goes just to the next trace. So instead of just soldering that pad there, I'll solder this pad all the way to this other pad, make a little bridge. But you can do that if you ever need to like do a quick little repair. Like for instance, if these came loose, I just bend them down to this next trace. But this is the only one that came loose. Some of these, the tiniest bit of the edge comes off. See, the thing is, you know, these boards are now 50 years old almost, and even if the metal is still good, the glue that originally held this copper layer to the board itself, you know, it's 50 years old. Sometimes it breaks down, and when you pull the solder off of there, sometimes it'll show you how unstable it's actually gotten. Now, once I put the solder back on there, it'll restabilize it for, you know, probably another 30, 40, 50 years. Who knows? I mean, this, even though this is solid state and circuit board stuff, this was still before the era of design to fail, just barely. This was designed to repair and be fixed, sort of. I mean, you know, to a certain point. Definitely not as robust as tube stuff that you could take apart and rebuild a dozen times. But you can definitely recap this once without really doing any damage as long as you know what you're doing. But you have to work carefully and slowly. Like I was working carefully and slowly, and this still peeled up on me. There was nothing I could have done about this one here. All right, so I got those EQ caps in there with them soldered. And you can see what I did here with this, making this little bridge right here. So I scraped the top of the trace off, and I soldered the wire all the way down the line until it was hit this little block. All the rest of these were fine. And you know, sometimes I'll use this little bit of pick here, and it'll help me clean up the board a little bit. See that little bit of waste there? The next step now is for me to do the these little tiny feedback caps. There's 4 of them. Like I said, there'll be an extra one left over that goes across the input transformer secondary. All right. So I'll go ahead and remove these 4. All right. So I have desoldered all 4 of these little caps, and these usually are pretty easy to push through. They're never glued down. And they have really long, thin wires. Yeah, that one's a little sticky, but come back. Yeah, there we go. You just want to be gentle. You do not want to be rough with this part here, because again, you're dealing with these traces. These traces are very fragile. You do not want to screw them up. But yeah, you can see I desolder them first, then I like to push them through. Sometimes they don't want to be pushed through, like I said, if they've got glue on them. That's usually the larger electrolytics, and then a couple of the larger film. So yeah, those 4 are already done. Look at that. Those get replaced with these little MLCC caps. Booyah. And like I said, these 2 go into the Echo Sense circuits, and then each of these is in the main gain blocks. All right, I'll go ahead and put those in there. Now I have installed these 4 little blue guys. 2 there, 1 in this gain block, and then 1 in this gain block. All right, I got those 4 caps installed. Next step is I will work from right to left, and I'll be taking out these electrolytics and replacing them. Most of these are power supply rails. So they're all the power supply caps are going to be 330 microfarad at 50 volts. A couple of these are coupling for the super low impedance parts of the circuit. Anyway, I'll go ahead and you'll see me. I'll pull out this whole section, and then I'll do those, and then I'll pull out this whole section and do those, and then I'll pull out this whole section and do those. All right, so there was a little bit of glue on 2 of these, and I'll go ahead and scrape that off. But I do want to point out that the electrolytic capacitors, as you probably should know, are polarized. So they have to go in a certain way. Like if you put them in reverse, they won't work correctly, and they might even explode on you. You want to pay particular attention to the way that the negative line is what's marked on here. You can see it even on the top. See that little black bar? That is your negative line. You want to make sure you've got the negative line pointing in the right direction. I will go ahead and clean up this glue and install the capacitors that go here in the correct manner. You can see here, this is my this is the back of the board after I've pulled the wires through for the first gain blocks electrolytics. And you can see I have those installed on the board. Then on this side I have pulled the wires through and snugged them in, and then now I'm going to solder those in and trim the ends. So that first section there is done. Got that all installed for you. Now we'll go for the second gain block here. I'll do this gain block next, and then once that little group is done, I'll go back and do this last little group here. These are the Echo sensors, Echo 1 and Echo 2. You can see here I've removed this all the electrolytic caps from this gain block here. You can see there was a little bit of glue on here, and I scraped most of it off. Make sure you clean these boards, but one thing is I do not use any kind of glue to put any of these parts back on. Could not see one of these parts falling off this board without there being like some desoldering or some major damage that glue just ain't gonna, the glue ain't gonna do nothing about that. I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit and then put the parts in there, flip it over, solder them, and then I'll be back over here to the last gain block. We're almost done. That gain block is installed. Oh, I missed one little thing. It was very good. And this side, see the parts are installed. So one thing I wanted to point out to you, there's a few of these little areas it's a little tight, especially these two. This capacitor fits between these 2 resistors. Sometimes when you push it in, you'll feel these like just nudge a little bit. And if these resistors do move a little bit, I like to go back and chase the little solder joint down there just in case. And then these sometimes are just a little bit splayed out. Well, they're a little tight, does not affect audio at all. And then this little block right here is usually pretty fine. Some of them, the actual spacing, like the space between the 2 holes, is wider than the base of the capacitors. So sometimes they do not fit totally flush. But you definitely want to get them as close to the board as you can. Got this one installed here. Next, I'm going to do the 2 Echo Sens, and that will wrap it up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull these 8 capacitors out, and then I'll be back. Those all came out rather easy. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you was, I've got the dental tool and I've got the soldering iron. One technique I like sometimes, if the part doesn't just fall through and I want to push through the little head, is I'll push it down with the tip of the soldering iron and kind of wiggle it a little bit so that it's not connected to the little walls, the little surrounds there. And then if I get it down far enough and I do it on both sides, sometimes it will fall. But then even then, once I've done that, even if it still doesn't fall, then I come back in with the little poker tool and then poke them through. All 6 of these fell through. Both of these are going to have a little bit of glue under them, so they need to be pulled out. See that? Yeah. Start to see that little bit of glue there. And then here. Yep. A little glue holding that one down too, just a little dab. I'll go ahead and install this last set of capacitors for the Echo Sense, and then I'll be done. And there it is. We are done, ladies and gentlemen. I've got all of the capacitors, the entire board, both coupling and electrolytic and EQ, both, all 3. Yeah, they're all installed. They're all correct. I've actually got another board that was already built beside it that I use for reference just to go and look. You'll see in my other videos, these are the boards that are going to get put in a rack case. There's going to be 4 of them in one box. So that's what this is. And then this here is my just this standard module. So somebody can get this from me and swap it out with their stock module and, compare them side by side if they like, or just upgrade all of them. So the last thing I like to do after I get all this installed is I'll go back and I will check all the traces from top to bottom, left to right, and I'll just make sure that I don't see any cracks. And if I do, I'll go back and chase them. But yeah, everything looks good on this so far. I'm looking for any damage. Looking for any maybe old repairs. I usually look for that when I first get these things ready, because usually old repairs are very obvious. Anyway, I didn't see any on here in my preliminary inspection, but I'll go through and make sure everything is operational, everything is good. All the switches and pots will get deoxit fader lube F5. That'll go in all of the pots, all of the switches. Those will all be refurbed. And yeah, it'll, aside from the worn paint on the front, which I'm not going to do anything about. I think it's kind of neat. The rest of this module is going to stay totally stock. I'm not going to do anything else with it. That way, if anybody else wants to do any mods to it, they can pick up where I left off here. The only thing I have changed is the EQ points and upgraded the capacitors so that it now can pass a lot more better bass. It's just a richer sound. It's not so much more bass. It's a better, fuller, deeper sound. Now, some guys will go to all the trouble of replacing the transistors and, for something newer, more modern with a faster slew rate. These are a little slow, but I find it makes them a little more tubey. You know what I mean? Like, I like the old transistors. I'm glad they're a little bit different. They give an original sound that, new transistors, if you're going to put new transistors and new capacitors, why not just do new resistors? And then by then, you might as well just build your own from scratch, right? At that point, the only thing you're leaving is the inductors. And by the way, in case you didn't know, these lovely guys are the inductors. This is why everybody loves these modules so much. These inductors are fantastic. They make it sound like a 70s console. Like, I dig it. I dig it. Maybe you want to redo the transistors. I don't do that. So she's done, and she is ready to go back into a console. All I got to do is put the back panel back on here, and it's good to go. All right, now I will have this available for sale, probably, unless you see this video, at the very beginning of September 2020. I will do trade-ins if people want to send these to me. I also will be selling kits of the version 2.0, so you can do the install yourself. Now that you've watched me do the whole thing, it shouldn't be very hard. I mean, it wasn't very hard before. I had pretty good instructions, and now that there's a whole video series of me doing the install, it should be pretty much foolproof for someone who knows how to run a desoldering station and knows how to use a soldering iron. and knows how to trim leads. That's all you really got to do. There's nothing hard here. You just have to be gentle and be really easy on the board and make sure you're not like messing up traces. The only other thing I haven't done yet is I need to run that 47 PF across the primary input. I'm not going to do that right now, but just that's an optional thing you can do. It's what I do for mine and what I'll be doing to this one. Well, Tablebeast is out here. This has been a long video. It's taken me a couple of hours here to do. And yeah, I'm glad I finally got this thing done. I've had requests for years to do a video series of this. If you check my other videos, I've got one from back in like, gosh, 2011, 2012. That shows me like doing the install in a time lapse. So you can go watch that too. Then I'll have the next step of actually measuring the metal case and doing all that good stuff. So if you're interested in not just the regular console modules, but breaking these boards out of here like this and racking them up, stick around. I'm going to be doing 2 different series. I was kind of limited in how I could box these up because it had already been, messed with. So I'll be doing another series later that will show me making a pair. And again, a pair is probably more likely than a quad for most people. All right. Talk to y'all again soon.